When working with HDR, basically you're making a set of compromises, right? Or you're trying to solve for a set of compromises. Take a look at these 5 images that we have here. If you look at this first image, right, I get a lot of really, really nice dark tones inside of here. So I like how rich this looks, but we have no data here, right? So this is kind of hard. And you have no data in here, in these sections, right? I'd like to be able to kind of see some data here and see some data here. Not possible at this exposure. If I move into the next one, well, this looks okay. I would have preferred it a little bit more undersaturated, and I'm getting definitely some area here, and I'm definitely getting some area here, but I'm beginning to lose a lot of the floor. As you move forward inside of these, you'll notice that they start getting better in those problem areas, but at the same time, you're also now losing a lot of the detail that you had in the other section. So it's always about those compromises. You're always saying to yourself, all right, well, what do I want to do? How do I want to solve this? And before, it was just one of those things that you kind of just lived with. Now in HDR, what you can do is you can take these sets of images, right, a bracket of all of these images, and you can put them together to be able to create something that the sum is much better than the parts. Now, inside of Bridge, the best way for you to do this is just to go to the Tools menu, and under the Tools menu, you have Photoshop, and from here you would select Merge to HDR Pro from the list. If you're doing this, and you're just doing this right inside of Photoshop, you can go into the File menu, and inside of the File menu, you have under the Automated, the option to Merge to HDR Pro. So you can go ahead and select it from there. Both of those will bring you into a similarly looking dialog box. It says, all right, well, what do you want to do from here? Do you want to use files, or do you want to use a specific folder? A lot of the times, I'm just going to get and use a folder, because what I'll do is I'll take all of my HDR files and I put, 5 of the files that I'm going to need inside of one specific folder. Now, I'm going to browse for this, and I'm going to go over here to the desktop, and I'm going to select your first folder that we have in the list. I like the option of automatically aligning the source images. When you do that, what that does is it takes those files and it just kind of automatically, and just puts them together for you. I do this even though I use a tripod, because you never really know. Somebody could, I was in Bodie, this is a ghost town. The floor is not very, very stable. So my slight moving on the floor could have misaligned something. Somebody walking by could have misaligned something. So even though, don't get sucked into it where you turn around and you go, all right, well, I shot with a tripod. It's okay. Still try to align it. From here, I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. It's going to take all of these images. It's going to ingest all of these images and then do a conversion. Once it converts all of those images, you'll be brought into the HDR dialog. And that's pretty much all this is. All you're doing is just taking all of these exposures and bringing them into one spot where you take that entire collection and you make it really, really big. Now, this is what the HDR dialog looks like. The problem that we have with HDR is that when it creates this high dynamic range image, right, basically you're taking all of the exposures, you're putting them together, and you're creating this super exposure. The problem is that our displays don't have the capability of being able to see all of that tone. There's too much tone for your display to be able to pick it up. So when you're working with HDR, in actuality, what you're doing is you're trying to now take a subset of it, right? HDR is this big image with too much tone. The subset of it is, well, how do I take those areas, that tone that I can't see, into an area where I can see it? So you're taking tone that is invisible and you're mapping it over to an area that is visible. That is a process called tone mapping. Technically, an HDR file is this 32-bit file. What we're going to do is we're going to make it into a smaller range by switching this over to a 16-bit file. And that's where we're going to decide, using a set of sliders, how we want to work with the specific tone that we can't see. And we're going to get and talk about that in the next lesson.